Hi, boys and girls. Time for science. Let me get my thing centered. There we go. Pull out your page, your science number 9 page. Sir Ernest Shackleton. This one. Here's Sir Ernest. And I want you to open your book up to page, your Planet Earth book, up to page 32. And I'm going to read, and you can answer questions on these pages. Excuse me, boys and girls. Imagine what it would be like to be trapped in the ice floes around the South Pole. Now, where's the South Pole? That's down here in Antarctica, okay? Imagine what it would be like to endure day after day of total darkness and temperatures down to 100 degrees below zero. Imagine what it would be like to have the ice under your feet suddenly split and break in two. This and much more happened to 28 men on the expedition to the South Pole in 1914. Sir Ernest Shackleton, captain of the ship Endurance, along with 27 other men, sailed from England on August 8, 1914, the same day that World War I began. Their goal was to be the first men to cross Antarctica on foot. Okay, so where did they go? They came from where? From England. All right. So they sailed from England all the way down, probably to South Georgia, which is right here. We're going to read about this later. And then from South Georgia, they were going to come on into Antarctica. And I'm going to show you another picture later on about that, okay? Sir Ernest Shackleton, captain of the ship Endurance, and that's when they left. Their goal was to be the first men to cross Antarctica on foot. They took dogs and sleds to carry their supplies and loaded the Endurance with food and equipment for their dangerous journey. So their boat's name, the ship that they took, was called the Endurance. And we're going to see, and you can look on the back of your page, and there you can see the Endurance. That's the Endurance right there. You see it? And here they are with their dogs on the land. We're going to learn about that. They traveled south into the freezing waters of the South Atlantic. You just did in geography, you just talked about all your oceans. So here's the South Atlantic. So when you get down here into the South Atlantic, the water begins to get very, very cold. Where am I? While they were still nearly 100 miles from their landing site, the Endurance was trapped in some ice floes and they were unable to break free. So as it got closer and closer, it began to get what? Trapped. Okay, now let me show you right here, right around here is where it got trapped in ice. So it sailed on down, and right in here, see how it changes colors, it gets colder. So here, right in this area, is where as they were sailing, it started to freeze and it closed in around their ship. From January, and they were unable to break free. From January through October of 1915, the crew lived on board the ship, each day hoping to see a break in the ice so they could continue their journey, but the ice just closed in tighter around them. So they went January, February, March, April, May, June, July, August, September, October. 10 months. They lived on the ship 10 months waiting for the ice to break open so that so the ship could move. Can you imagine living on a boat for 10 months in freezing cold weather? Oh my goodness. During this time, the crew experienced their first polar winter. Weeks passed with no sunlight. It was an endless darkness that troubled the minds of many of the men. So imagine, there was no day and no night. It was dark the whole time. Because remember in geography how we talked about when the Earth is, since it's at an angle, when it's on a certain side of the sun, the light doesn't reach those southern parts or the northern parts. So they could have a couple weeks where it's only dark. It doesn't even get daylight. And that's what happened here. Can you imagine living 2 or 3 weeks and it never getting light outside? You'd go to sleep, it'd be dark. You'd wake up, it's dark. You go the whole day eating, doing whatever you need to do. It's dark. You go back to sleep, it's dark. You wake up, it's dark. And it was like that for a couple weeks. How many of you would enjoy that? I would not like that at all. It was an endless darkness. In addition, the temperatures were very cold, often down to negative 100 degrees Fahrenheit. I mean, that is some freezing cold. After nearly 9 months of being trapped in the ice, the pressure became too great and the ship succumbed to the ice and began to break apart. So the ice, remember we talked about the glaciers, how they keep moving. Well, guess what? All of a sudden, it started to crush the ship. Look on the back. What does it look like is happening to the ship? It's like falling over, isn't it? Because the ice is crushing the ship. After nearly 9 months of being trapped, the men were forced to abandon the ship, saving what they could, and began living on the ice floes. Because of the movement of the ocean, the ice floes were not stable. Even very, very large pieces of ice, some a mile wide, would suddenly crack and split apart. Imagine you're walking, all of a sudden it goes and starts moving apart, and you're like standing there, hey, right? Because if you fall in the water, you're dead. It's so cold, you're going to be dead within few seconds, really. That's how cold it is. Several times the men had to break camp with little notice and move to another piece of ice as the one they had been on began to break apart. So they have their tents set up when they're moving. All of a sudden it starts to crack. They got to get up, get their stuff packed, and move quickly before it cracks all the way. The men were able to save much of their supplies along with 3 small boats, which they began to try to move across the ice using the dogs and sleds. This proved extremely difficult, and after only a few days of exhausting work, they had made very little progress towards land. They decided to let the movement of ice take them closer to land. So look, basically, they started getting trapped in here, in this, I think it's actually, this is what happened, was it got trapped in ice here, but as the ice moved, it kept moving them up this way. See, the ice is moving, isn't it? So their boat got trapped here, but it ended up moving, and I'll show you a picture in a minute. It's about right here. Right here is where the Endurance, out in this area, is where the Endurance sank. Now over here is a bunch of ice. So they were just waiting for this ice to carry them closer to land so they could actually get on land. So they're basically living on ice that's floating on the ocean. That's pretty scary, okay? After months of living on the boat and weeks of living on ice, the food supplies became very low. They were able to survive by hunting seals and penguins and using the seal blubber for fuel. Seal blubber, so what happens is you have the skin and then you have like the fat. Okay, they use the fat, which is the blubber of the whales, as oil because it would burn. Okay, however, eventually they were forced to shoot their dogs because there was no food for the dogs. This saddened the men. So they had to decide, we don't have enough meat to feed the men and the dogs, so what are we going to do? Shoot the dogs. So they killed the dogs so they wouldn't have to feed them because they didn't have enough meat. Because if they didn't have meat, they would starve. Finally, after nearly 6 months of living in the open, moving from ice floe to ice floe, there was enough of an opening in the ice where they were able to launch 3 small boats. They were able to sail these boats between ice floes to the last island within nearly 1,000 miles. This island was called Elephant Island and was a little more than a desolate rock. So basically, it's right here. Right here is Elephant Island. You can't really see it, okay, but this is where it is. It's right this little island right here. So from here, they finally got their little boats and they found cracks in the ice that they could sail in between the ice, and they sailed all the way up to Elephant Island. Okay, does that make sense? And I'll show you another picture in a minute. However, it said it was little more than a desolate rock, which means there was nothing there. However, it was solid ground and did not split unexpectedly with the shifting of the ice. After 497 days, the crew was on solid ground again. There's only 365 days in a year. This was 497, almost 500 days that they had not stood on solid ground. They'd been living on the boat and on ice for more than a year. Isn't that crazy? And finally, they're on Elephant Island right here, and they're on finally solid ground, which means they can set up camp and they don't have to worry about about it splitting and breaking apart. It was decided that the best chance they had for rescue was for 6 men to take one of the 3 open boats and try to row to the nearest inhabited island, which was 800 miles away. Shackleton and 5 other men set sail on April 24th, 1916, on a course for South Georgia Island, where they hoped to get help from whalers that worked there that time of year. Now, whalers were big boats that would go out and they would hunt whales because they would sell the blubber as oil. So South Georgia is right here. So they were going to sail their boat from this little island right here all the way here, 800 miles away. Now, for us, I mean, we can drive 800 miles pretty quickly with our car, all right? Doesn't take a super long time. It'll take a couple hours. But can you imagine, or maybe, yeah, probably a couple hours. I mean, can you imagine over the ocean, in the cold water, in the ocean, having to sail a little boat? On May 10th, 1916, against incredible odds, Shackleton and his men reached South Georgia Island. So finally they got there. All right? So it took them April and May. It took them almost a month to get there, 3 weeks to get there. That's almost 21 days. They landed on the west side of the island, which was this side over here, okay? On the west side of the island, where they, of the island, and were unable to sail around the island due to bad weather. So they landed on this side, but they wanted to sail around here to the town, but they couldn't because there was so many storms and everything. So 3 of the men decided to climb the giant mountains of ice to reach the whalers' camp. So they climbed over the mountains to get there. They climbed over the mountains. They were received as if they had risen from the dead. Despite the incredible hardships he had endured, Shackleton rested for only 1 day before setting out to rescue his crew. So he's extremely tired. Remember, he's been 3 weeks in the ocean. He gets there, he sleeps 1 day, and the next day he's like, hey, we got to go rescue our guys who are still stuck on Elephant Island. Every attempt was met with defeat. That means every single time he tried, it didn't happen. He was not able to rescue his men. Several times, ships had to turn back because of the ice. So they'd get on a boat, they'd come this way to rescue them, but they had to turn around because the ice started to get too thick, because they didn't want to get another ship to get caught up in the ice. Because remember, around this area, it is really, really cold. Every attempt. So several ships had to turn back. A ship that was able to withstand the ice was sent from England, but would take weeks to arrive. So they said, you know what, we have this one boat that's super strong. It can actually push through the ice, but it's got to come from England all the way up here. So it's got to sail all the way down here to get to there. And they said, that's just going to take way too long. We can't, the guys are going to be dead. They're going to starve to death before that happens. Shackleton was unwilling to wait and kept looking for another way to rescue his crew. Finally, Shackleton was able to borrow a ship from a Chilean government. Now, Chile is right here. So see, he borrowed a ship from this government of Chile. And the weather cooperated long enough for them to reach Elephant Island on August 30th, 1916. Now, listen, they left on April, May, June, July, August. 4 months. So the men sat on this island, this piece of rock, really, in the middle of the ocean, for 4 months, waiting for Shackleton to come back and rescue them. And they survived. Amazingly, every man that set out on the expedition in August 1914 was rescued in August 1916. So it's been 2 years. Imagine, they left, and 2 years later, they get rescued from the island. It was 2 years just to get stuck and go through all that. 2 whole years. The amazing stamina and the hope of these men and their trust in their captain is a story that should not be forgotten. After being rescued, every man said that he felt that there was a supernatural being that was watching over them. Who's that supernatural being? Who was protecting them and watching over them? Who helped them even in the most difficult times? Who made sure they didn't starve to death or freeze to death or fall through the cracks in the ice? They all felt the presence of God throughout their amazing ordeal. Ernest Shackleton said in his speech in 1920, I have no doubt that Providence guided us. Now, who's Providence? Of course, it's God, divine Providence. He guided us not only across the snowfields. Now, notice we studied what snowfields were, right? Remember, that's where it just accumulates lots of ice, and the bottom parts of the ice turn into what? Glaciers, and the gravity pulls the glaciers down. Okay, that's why the ice and the oceans are moving. Not only across the snowfields, but across the white storm sea that separated Elephant Island from our landing place on South Georgia. So you have to realize that when they were in that little bitty boat and they were sailing 800 miles, they probably went through some storms. And go on YouTube and Google storms in the ocean. And I want you to tell me if you'd like to be on a boat sailing from this little island to this island and be in a little bitty fishing boat, right? Just to try and arrive there and see the kind of storms. I know that during that long and racking march of 36 hours over the unnamed mountains and glaciers of South Georgia, it seemed to me often that we were 4, not 3. He said, so when we landed on this little island right here of Georgia, and we had to climb over those mountains, it wasn't just us 3, there were 4 of us. Who's the 4th person he was talking about? That's right, God. He said God was with them. You know, boys and girls, when we go through difficult stuff, does God leave us by ourselves? Nope, he doesn't. He's always with us, giving us the strength and the guidance of what to do. Sometimes it may feel we're alone because we can look around and we don't see anybody there, right? Your parents might not be there. Your friends might not be there. You're there by yourself, walking through something difficult, something hard. But guess who's always there with you? God's there. And see, even through the difficulties that Sir Shackleton had, he knew that God was with him, strengthening him. To learn more about this amazing adventure and bravery of these men, read Endurance, Shackleton's Incredible Voyage by Alfred Lansing. So if you want to read that, you feel free to go to the library and get that. Now let me show you a picture, a better image. Oops, where'd it go? Oh no. Where'd my picture go? I had it right here. Here it is. All right. So let me see if I can do this. So see, here is where they were sailing, and this is where they got stuck. And they moved all the way up to here, you see? And then they went all the way up here to the little island. From the island, they took the boat all the way up there. I just found this map. I wish I would have known about it. I would have put it in your papers. Maybe I'll print it out for you and send it there. But this shows the journey. So see, it got stuck right in here. And because the ocean was moving and the ice was moving and cracking, the Endurance ended up coming up here. And this is where the Endurance finally cracked, and they had to leave the Endurance. Now notice that they were in the middle. When the Endurance cracked over, they were right where? They were in the water. But notice what the picture. Look on the back of your page that I gave you, and notice the ship. Look at that. It's in the ice. See, this is all ice right here. It got trapped in the ice. This right here is in the middle of the ocean, and they're having to get out and walk across the ice. So here's Sir Shackleton. Okay? That's a great story. All right, boys and girls, enjoy it. If you want to go on YouTube and find some videos of Sir Shackleton, feel free to do that, and you can research him some more and learn out some of his amazing stuff. But he trusted God in the midst of difficulties. And the reason we study about these men and the difficulties that they had and people in history, so that we can see, you know what? God protected them. God watched over them. God helped them even in the midst of very dangerous situations. And if God did that for them, guess what he can do for us? He can protect us and watch over us as well, even when we go through difficult situations. Because God loves us and he cares for us and he cares for you. And he watches over you and he protects you. He is divine providence. And the Bible says that even though he knows when a sparrow is hungry or when animals are hungry, how much more does he love you, right? He loves you much more than he loves the animals because you were created in his image, perfect, just like he wanted, and he loves you. So he's going to watch out for you and protect you. All right. Talk to you later, boys and girls. Bye.